So welcome to the Rise of the Super Being podcast. I'm Vanderson Pires, your host, and today my guest is Kathryn Berkett. Kathryn is a neuroscientist, and she did an awesome TED Talk named Neuroscience of Device Zombies. What a cool name. How was that? First, welcome to the Rise of the Super Being for the second time. We did a whole podcast yesterday, and unfortunately the audio failed, and I'm so sorry, and I'm so grateful for you to coming back. So thank you so much for coming back. Please, thank you.
Not a problem, and that's all that resilience is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Get back on and do it again. No, it was great. It was great fun, so it's good to be here again.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. So how was so first, can you please tell us a little bit of your background and how did you start to study neuroscience? Even I have yesterday I was trying to pronounce this name because you have a master in education psychology in neurosequential. I cannot say this name. Can you
Neurosequential Model of Therapeutics.
Yes.
Neurosequential, the brain is neuro, and sequential is that the brain develops from the bottom to the top. So it's sort of acknowledging that if things happen early in life, they've impacted the lower parts of the brain. So if we want to repair, then we go back to the early parts of the brain to repair. And the beautiful thing about the early parts of the brain is they were developed when we touched our babies and rocked our babies and sung to our babies, which is why movement and exercise and music and drama is actually really good for developing the brain. So it's really beautiful science and big words and big research to say, hey, let's get out and be connected human beings, and that's actually how we heal and how we become better people. So it's pretty cool.
That's awesome. So Kathryn, why this subject got your attention?
Yeah, I first worked in an activity centre, which is where children who didn't quite fit into school went. And I recognised the amazing intelligence and ability of some of the kids there. Yet we knew that they wouldn't be going along the normal channel of getting themselves to a place where they could really excel. So I went and studied educational psychology at university. Loved it, then worked for an organisation called Brainwave Trust and talked about the neuroscience of the brain, and one, loved the information, and two, loved talking to audiences. So I was like, and so then I just studied more and did the Neurosequential Model of Therapeutics with Dr. Perry, and now I have my own business, Engage Training, and I train all over the country. I was training internationally, but not at the moment. So just love it. Just get out and train and talk about how to keep us the most healthy in our brain as well as our body, which is pretty cool.
That's awesome. So how about your TED Talk? That was a really, really good one. I really recommend. I'm going to even post the link on the description of the video so you guys can check it out. Also, just don't forget, if you're listening this podcast on Spotify or Applecast, remember you can watch that as well on YouTube. So how was the experience of the TED Talk? Because it was really, really good.
Thank you. I'm really glad it was good because I got so nervous. I love presenting. I can present to, I had 1,400 people in an audience a few months ago. Loved it. But never been so nervous in my life. Did a test run the day before and absolutely lost the plot. And so practiced all night, all morning, and got so sick of the speech by the time I got on the stage. And it took quite a long time for it to come out because I called it Neuroscience of Device Zombies. They took ages to release it. So I was waiting because I was so scared I was going to look like a zombie on the stage and just standing there because I can't remember it. So I'm really glad when you watch it, I don't actually look too bad, but that's purely luck because it was an amazing experience. And it's one of those things we push ourselves into and we get really scared and we get really worried. And I could have failed really badly, but we do that, don't we? But I love it, and I'm really pleased that I've had that experience and that I've got the TED Talk. So yeah, that's awesome. That's super cool. So Kathryn, you start your TED Talking asking, talking about this idea of giving kids alcohol, right? A 3 years old alcohol, wine. Yeah? So how can you explain a little bit more about that? Yeah, so it's obviously not true. I don't feed my babies, my young babies, alcohol. But the idea of screens and devices is they've been introduced into our world, and they didn't get through an ethics committee. Nobody said, actually, are these going to be okay? Are they not? They were just brought in. And if you watch The Social Dilemma or talk to really anyone, we can see that they're not good. They're not good in lots of ways. In some ways, they're brilliant. There's lots of things about screens that are great, but there's some really negative things. And it's sort of like when smoking first came out, we thought it was sexy and it helped me breathe better and it was great for my lungs. And now we realize it actually kills you, you know? So what we've got to start doing is recognizing the good and the bad about screens. And so that's what my TED Talk tries to do, is just to give you a bit of neuroscience around why screens could be good and why screens could be bad, what balance is needed, and gives parents and other whānau just really the drive to start being careful of this, to start keeping our kids away from screens too much, because it's not fair. It's like having alcohol around in the house and saying, yeah, carry on, you know, drink it if you want. But of course we would if there was no boundaries around it. So that's why I use the analogy of alcohol. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was a great one. So Kathryn, let's start with the bad things first. What's on your studies? What has been showing has been very bad on the kids' brain? So let's start with the kids, so we can go up to teenagers, to the adults.
Yeah, well, and it's, if you've grown up and you're an adult now and you spent most of your life without a screen, without a device, you're probably okay. I mean, whatever you do is going to change your brain slightly. It's just early on, our brain is changing so fast that the impact is so much more. And everything we do next is built on what we did before. So you can imagine if you're not moving, a lot of our kids don't move enough, they don't balance, they can't hold books, they can't spin, you know, like they can't cross midlines. And so it's because they're not practicing, they're not doing things. And so that's what we look at screens is what are our kids doing on the screens and what's that doing to their brain? And then what aren't they doing? And so the big thing about what aren't they doing is they're not moving and they're not exercising. So that's the one bad thing. But the negative about being on screens is that the way our brain works is the more you repeat something, the more you learn it and the more it gets laid down in the brain. The process is called myelination. And so what we think about on screens is what are our kids doing again and again and again? And they're doing quite violent, sometimes quite... they ridicule people a lot. Even if you're watching YouTube things and stuff like that, there's a lot of people being sort of really sarcastic and mean to each other a lot. And there's a lot of things on screens that are just done again and again and again. And if we keep watching them, they become normal. And I gave the analogy yesterday, and I like people to think, so anyone listening, think inside your head, think in your head one word that a dog would say. And for most people, not everyone, most people, the word's woof. Yeah. Because old MacDonald says a dog says woof, and Harry McCleary says a dog says woof. And we've heard it so many times, we've laid down that connection. So now what I want you to do now, though, is I want you to think, where is my evidence? Okay? So then, have you ever observed a dog with its lips in a W movement? The dog can't get its lips into a woof. So no dog's actually ever said woof. Okay? Yeah. So you've heard woof so many times, you just believed it. You didn't have any evidence. And if you've known someone of a younger generation, you've probably taught them that a dog says woof. So what we know is the brain doesn't say, oh, that's the correct piece of information, let's myelinate that. It's whatever's repeated. And by the way, it doesn't matter if you think a dog says woof, and I'll keep teaching little kids that a dog says woof. It doesn't matter. But some things do. These people are bad. These people are, you know, this. It's okay to hurt people. It's okay to put people down. This is the way that relationships are. This is the way that friendships are. This is the way that romantic relationships are. This makes you good. This makes you bad. What my body should look like. What, you know, like my language should be. All of these things, if we hear them enough, they lay down the truth for us. And that's the stuff that starts getting really scary, because some of the messages, some of the things on screens are actually not healthy. They're really not. And we don't even notice. You didn't know you'd been told a lie about a dog says woof. And that's what worries me a lot about screens, about the constant use of them. Yeah.
Yeah, just remind something I always say to my students, the chains of a habit is too light to be felt until it's too heavy to be broken. The power of repetition, or good, doesn't matter if you're repeating something good or bad, it's going to become very powerful and very hard to break the habit, right?
And like you say, too light to notice. So it just happens, and it's like all of a sudden, our kids are talking a certain way or being a certain way or acting a certain way, and we go, oh, where did that come from? And could potentially have just come from watching something on a screen. I mean, you look at how some children who have spent so much time in front of the TV, New Zealand kids who haven't had much interaction but have watched TV, can have American accents from just watching American shows, and you're like, how's that, So, so it's...
That's so interesting, yeah. That's so interesting. Yeah, and I love what you said about the development of the body as well, coordination and all of that, because I see at the academy teaching people as well, we can see when someone has been active and someone has not been that active, the consequence of that.
Yeah, and you think about the long-term benefits when you become an older person. When you're thinking about muscle atrophying, if you haven't got it, we're going to lose it faster and things like that, and just strength of your abdominal muscles to hold your back up and things like that. It's just things that our kids naturally did. When you watch kids, they just spin and jump and run, and unless they're on a device. Yeah, and when they're on a device, that's it. And what don't they do? What aren't they doing with creativity, and what aren't they thinking up? And they're sitting there and they're bored, and you go, you're bored. Find something to do. And next minute they've got a box, or my kids used to have this great big soft ball and a bat, and they used to play like inside the house because it was a soft ball. Or next minute they'd be playing some game that I've never even thought of, and they'd come up with a game. Just think what that does to our brain. It's amazing. You hand them a tablet and they're going to do what's on the tablet. There's no creativity there. There's no exploration. There's no finding yourself in there. And and a bit of it's fine. A bit's fine. Every now and then chucking them on there and they zombie out, that's fine. But where's your balance?
So, Kathryn, what's the early age now? What's the average early age to have access to device in developed countries?
As soon as they can pick it up.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's amazing how young our kids are accessing devices, and, looking at them and actually being able to open up, get the password in and play with them, or parents are giving them things at a very young age because it keeps them quiet. It's a lot tidier. It's a lot easier. It really gives you lots of peace. And so, right from when they can, probably even before they can hold it, propping it up in front of them or something, there's some young kids accessing devices, and then they get onto them for longer and longer periods of time as they get older.
So, Kathryn, you told me something yesterday, and I was shocked because first I already thought this was a law or something like that, or common sense. But the phones are not illegal at schools, right? I was shocked when you say it's not illegal. So all the kids can have their phones. I didn't know that.
Yeah, all day and in class. And it depends on, some schools have a full policy, but most schools it's up to the teacher's decision whether you can have phones in class. And if you look at lunchtimes, which I'd love every school to ban devices all day. There's no reason to have a device. Oh my goodness, but I need to tell my child when they need to be home. Yeah, well, they can get it back at the end of the day. But at lunchtime, you see them and they're all sitting around and they're just on devices and they're not moving and they're not talking to each other. And there might be, oh no, they're talking to each other on here. But there's not this face-to-face non-verbal communication that's so important to us when we grow up and we meet strangers especially, or we're in a group of people that we don't know so much. You rely a lot on non-verbals. Or when you're with good friends and they are worried or scared or upset, So those non-verbals are really important. And our kids are not spending enough time in their sensitive period of developing this learning non-verbal communication. They're just sitting on these devices.
Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah, so no, they're not. And they're even, a lot of schools require your own devices, BYOD, bring your own devices, and they require devices and they require learning on it. Now, some learning needs devices. There's a lot of learning we don't need devices with.
Yeah.
It's just easy. It's a lot easier, and it's easier to keep track of it. I get all that, but we've got to start recognizing what the negatives on our brain are. And there are a lot a lot of stuff we're missing out on. Yeah.
Any good stuff?
There's lots of good stuff. I mean, one of the really amazing things is the ability to FaceTime people, to Skype or to Zoom people. And there's a really neat story of a little toddler, and she was FaceTiming her grandparents in Australia, and they were on all the time, from when she was a baby, and she would FaceTime them. And then they went to Australia to their grandparents' big anniversary, and they walked in the room, and there was lots of people in the room, and this wee girl had never physically met her grandparents because she'd never met them, but she'd FaceTimed all the time, and she ran straight over to her grandparents and hugged them.
Super cool.
And when you think about that, especially at the moment with this separation, how beautifully we can keep relationships and we can keep, connections, and so that's a fantastic thing about screens. Information, as long as we're careful with it, understanding that there's more going on in the world, learning about things. I mean, we used to have to find the encyclopedia and open it up, which was great and it was exciting, but now you can Google things and find out about, the Eiffel Tower and how many things, and actually see it from 3D, and how cool is that? So there's a lot of really good things. We can find things, a lot of people with difficulties learning can use devices to help them learn better, because they give them, they can help that learning space. So there are a lot of good things. So essentially I ask, when you're on this screen, what do you think's growing in your brain? Is it, oh, wow, I'm learning this and this new stuff? Or am I actually myelinating some really weird and maybe negative spaces, and also keeping my body in a stress response? And a lot of our time on the computer when we're doing gaming and social media, we're keeping our body in a state of stress, which is really bad for our health. So what's going on, do you think, in the brain? Good or bad? Good, then that's okay. Bad, then how long are you going to let that go on? And so that's because we can all do bad stuff every now and then. So that's but there's some really good stuff about screens, obviously. Keeping in contact, we can let kids, we don't have to organize things. I love it because I don't have to organize anything. I can just decide at the moment and text my kids if I need to let them know something. So I love all that stuff, but we've just got to work out what is okay and what isn't.
Yeah, but even from our talk yesterday, I just made a few notes, for example, highlighting the negative things, so fear of missing out, unrealistic expectations, negative body image, disturbance in sleep patterns. This I talk to friends, myself, experience a lot of that. For me, the remedy against the sleeping, it's to be able to deal a little bit with this bad thing about the social media. It's mindfulness meditation, but it's a battle. It's not that easy. For sure, the social media has a very, very strong, powerful influence on our sleeping patterns.
And there's some science behind it. First of all, our middle-age adolescents. So, and every time you're ever given an age, it's an idea. But around about 15-ish, 16-ish for our adolescents, the brain actually changes in the release of melatonin. So melatonin makes us, helps us go to sleep. And so they've seen research that shows it can be up to an hour, and some research suggests even up to 2 hours later it resets itself. And they think that's because historically adolescents sort of looked after the village at night. They were on night shift. So it's like this natural shift. And now your kids are going to sleep after you're like, oh, I'm tired. And they're like, oh, I'm not tired, which is natural. And that's normal. But what we then do is we go to bed and we leave them with their devices. And a couple of things are happening. When we increase our status, so if we're playing games, or when we have social media, when we get relationships, we get dopamine pings, and dopamine is a pleasurable chemical. And so that's the addiction thing that I talk about on my TED Talk. And so they go, oh, another one. And it's keeping your stress response going, which is cortisol, which is one of the chemicals in the stress response. And that reduces melatonin, right? So already you've got an understanding of that. The blue light on the screen actually reduces melatonin. If people have seasonal affect deficiency disorder, which, they get a lot in England with all the darkness, or people have jet lag issues, we use blue lights to stimulate their wake-up cycle. And blue lights are on the screen. So
all the time,
so parents go to bed and leave their kids with screens and go, don't use them, which is really not fair, because all of us, well, not all of us, but most of us, including myself, can admit that it's quite hard to turn off a screen.
Yeah.
So really, one big message is do not leave them up with screens. And people go, well, how do I do that? And I go, put them in your room, or you put them you can put them at the other side of your room and leave them there. You don't have to have them near you, but don't let our kids stay up with these things and expect them to be able to control that behaviour, because then they start till 2-3 o'clock in the morning, and they're tired the next morning, then they miss school, and then that negative cycle can happen. So it's definitely, there's natural things about sleep change, and then there's unnatural environmental, our new modern environment things that can affect it.
So, Kathryn, what's the safe age to unleash a little bit the kids? What's the safest when the brain it's a little bit more capable to handle this amount of damage and stress?
Well, if you were serious, it would be 18. It would be 18, 19 when the brain is really beautifully developed. But my children have had devices younger than that, and that's not the age I'm saying. If we were going scientifically, what we have to recognise is if we think about alcohol, if we were introducing our kids to alcohol, we wouldn't say, oh, off you go to your first party and just do whatever you like, and here's a bottle of rum, and, don't drink too much of it, right? You wouldn't do that. You would teach them. You'd say, this is how much, have a drink of water in between, check in with yourself, all of this sort of stuff. And we'd put all these safety parameters around it. And depending on where they're going and who they're with and how old they are, those parameters would be different. So for our little ones on a screen, it's about not letting them have that. If they've got phones for whatever reason, a lot of people who live in different houses, it's actually something that you sort of need, or then just grab the phone when they come home and you have the phone for the evening, so that it's not a temptation for them. As they get older, they should be able to monitor that themselves better, but it also depends on the addictive personality or the sort of personality of the child. So parents are the best ones to decide, but you have to actually be truthful and they'll go, I'm just going to my room to do some homework, and like, where's your phone? Well, give me your phone and off you go and do your homework. Stand up and be strong enough to put those boundaries in for our kids. Yeah, so it's not an age thing. It's a you balance and stuff like that, and work it out. And like I said, if our 4 or 5, 6-year-old is playing a game on the computer that's a little bit fun and stuff like that, then that's okay for a little while. But we don't want to be doing that younger than that, and we don't want to be doing it for too long. So so it's totally up to the situation, but depending on the age and the ability, we monitor it.
So, Kathryn, how about teenagers versus depression, anxiety?
Yeah, there's been some quite good studies out. Unfortunately, at least we understand, I suppose, a little bit of where it's coming from, but creating quite a clear link between social media, especially, and depression, anxiety, etc. And Jonathan Haidt, Haidt is his last name. He wrote The Coddling of the American Mind. And so in his book, he has lots of statistics and links between, especially using screens in middle school, as they call it, so our intermediate-ish school, when the brain is really, really pushing towards socialization. So when our kids hit puberty, and whatever age that is, because there's a big span of that, when our kids hit puberty, their bodies change. And one of the main reasons their bodies change is so that they can reproduce. And I always say at that stage, I am not suggesting reproducing, but they can reproduce. So the signal goes, I can produce a baby. So my brain has to go from being a child, being looked after, to becoming the protector. So all these things change in the brain to become a protector. And when that happens, it's sort of an upgrade in the brain. It's beautiful. The brain just works so hard, but because it's working so hard, it sort of glitches. It's like uploading a new program. And so some of the things that can be really affected by social media and screens is facial recognition. So we have to upgrade our ability to recognize faces. So while the brain's glitching, upgrading, it sort of goes back to a bit of a simple recipe. So if you smile with your adolescent, that's fine. But if you look confused or hungry, they'll go, why are you angry at me? And adolescents always get, you're angry at me. And you're like, no, I'm not, because they see angry or sad, any sort of negative emotions. So what that means is they find it harder to read emotions, which means it's safer behind a screen. But they're upgrading their facial, ability to read facial expressions, which means they need more time face-to-face to learn it. Otherwise, they'll become an adult who finds it very difficult to read complex facial expressions. So, and perspective taking, thinking about somebody else or caring about, thinking that they can have a different idea to you is upgrading as well. So that makes them quite confused and self-absorbed, which means being behind here is a lot easier. And so that's a natural place for our kids to be in adolescence. And we went through that, but we still had to be social. Now they can just hide behind here. And so it's quite scary how in adolescence, when it's more essential for us to be social and be pushing ourselves into slightly uncomfortable positions. It's a lot easier for parents to let them live behind here. And another thing that can be quite important, so much that changes in the adolescent brain. But one of the things that we find with social media and why girls can be affected so much, and when I say girls, I don't mean all girls, and some boys are affected by this, it's just a generalized statement, is when we hit puberty, we activate a lot of estrogen, females, and then estrogen creates oxytocin. And oxytocin is our bonding hormone where we fell in love with our babies. And so when we fell in love with our babies, we just had to be with them all the time, right? And so our adolescent girls are getting this increase, it's all along a spectrum of this oxytocin. And you see it when they meet other girls and they cuddle them and kiss them and they've seen them 5 minutes before, so they love being with each other. And that's because we want to form a clique of girls to help us raise our babies, right? And so that's biology and it's evolution and stuff, which is cool. But what it meant when I was an adolescent is, yes, you wanted to be with those girls. If you got kicked out, you felt horrible, you felt terrible. Now, the same biology is happening, but we have these devices that you get home and you can get kicked out, not just of groups. You can just post something and nobody likes it, or, all of these things that increase how many times you're pushed in and out of a group. So we can see that there's a lot of natural things for all of us went through in adolescence, but because of technology, it's creating a real issue. And so that lack of sort of empathy, which comes from that lack of facial expression and perspective taking, plus that feeling of needing to be in a group, you can see why, especially girls, but boys get it as well, feel that increased socialization issues in adolescence. So so that's something we just have to be aware of and understand and support our kids as much as possible. But that's why these things can be really difficult. Yeah, because it's so seductive. Even yesterday, we were talking about people from the past, philosophers, and has warning us about. One day technology is going to become so seductive more than the real life, and I think that's the time we are living right now. Even I mentioned as well a friend of mine who received the video when it was viral, the shooting in Christchurch. And he said, I watched a few seconds and I got someone playing a video game. So how crazy is that, when the distortion of reality in those things just becomes one thing, a massive thing. Yeah, and the brain, if you repeat it enough, that myelination process I talked about, the brain doesn't really decipher between real and fake. So if we watch enough things on screens, it's actually what we believe. And one of the things that we do, even by the age of 1 year old, but definitely sort of 18 months old, we have a really, really good classification in the brain between who is good, so who is my tribe, who is me, and they'll keep me alive, and anyone who's not in there is instantly them. So even a baby at 1 year old, you'll show them pictures of, sort of ethnicities that they've never seen, and they'll be scared, which is a good thing in the brain because, you shouldn't be friends with people you don't understand about, and they could be, bad. So that's the brain setting itself up for survival. Hopefully when we get older, if we meet someone who looks different, we wait and we assess and we talk to them and go, oh, actually they're okay. But what you can see is we can set up us and them. What we can also do is actually make them. We can say, this person is bad. Can you see this feeling associated with someone who looks like this is bad? And it's not just ethnicities, it's how tall they are, how they speak, everything like that. And so what we're getting on gaming especially is a repetition of who's good and who's bad. And even our little toddlers are sitting in rooms and they're watching other people in the family play these games. And if we're honest, if we play the same sort of games again and again, it's a very similar goodie and baddie. And what you can see is if you continue to play this, especially these days when you're the first person and you're actually doing the shooting and stuff, then that can create a knowledge in our brain that these people are bad, and also a knowledge in our brain that hurting people is okay. And I still remember, I would have been 10 years old, I think 10 or 11, my cousin and I were at my grandma's place. And beautiful grandma, she was one of the most amazing people I've ever been lucky enough to meet. And we were watching a movie, and someone was running down an alleyway, and there was a gunshot, and this person fell over. Honestly, that was it. And my cousin and I, same ages, we just went, and my grandma went, oh, and I remember watching that and thinking, wow, she just got there was no blood, no nothing. There's just a gunshot and they fell over. And I thought at that time, I remember thinking, imagine putting a gun in my hand and putting a gun in my grandma's hand and saying, shoot that person. You have to shoot them, and you think, who's going to cave first? It's going to be me, because I had less empathy for the person. My grandma couldn't even imagine it. Not, I couldn't do it, but and now look at us. We're shooting people, stabbing people, killing people day after day after day. And you wonder what that's doing to us. If we had that opportunity in the real life, would we possibly do it easier? And I'm not saying everyone would, but a lot of people, it would make a difference to their actions.
That's so interesting. Now you explain a lot why sometimes I scare people. It's because because I'm from another place. Thank you. Now I'm not gonna take things more personally. Of course, I'm joking. So how can we be more in control of our behavior?
As in using screens or our behavior?
In general. So, because this is going to affect as well our habit, our addiction to the screens. Huh?
I suppose, and again, everyone's different, isn't it? And everyone's got different ways, but really simplifying, I simplify the brain into two levels. The lower level is red brain, and it's all our survival mechanisms and our emotional mechanisms. And the green brain is our prefrontal cortex, so we override impulses and we're logical and rational, empathic, beautiful, upstanding part of the brain. And I talk about the continuum between the two. And when anything in our environment makes us feel under threat, the red brain starts to gain energy because it's the survival part. And it could be that you see a lion in the distance, right? You start going, oh, that's dangerous. And your red brain would activate the fight-flight response. Or you might not find your keys to go out, or the T-shirt that the adolescent wants for their uniform day, or the 2-year-old with their crayon, so it's all the same thing. Our brain goes, oh, there's a threat, more energy needed to stay alive. And so the more energy that red brain requires, the more that goes away from here. So the more worried we are, the more emails in our inbox, the more, whatever we've got going on or stuff. And we talk about all of those variables that can be in our world. And so the more activated your red, the less this. And up in the really top part of the green brain is our brake system, is our inhibition system. And so sometimes we know something's not right, but we'll do it anyway. And that's often because this is activating. So if we want to override things, if we want to make really good decisions based on lots of things that we understand, like all of that we have to have as much of our green brain available as possible. So it's about looking after ourselves and keeping our bodies and brain in a calm space. And one of the most powerful things we can do, which is what you work with, obviously, is the breath. And our whole systems, all linked up together. And I talk about the tug of war to calm. And so if we get one of our organs to start calming down, we can start calming down. And we can't get our brain to calm down because the part of our brain that calms down is the green brain, and it's not there right now. It's like, if you're like, I can't find my keys, I can't find, and I say, calm down. Not going to work. Do you see? So, and you can't calm your kidney or your liver or your heart. There is one organ that we have control over, and that organ is our lungs. But if we start to calm our lungs down, it's like the team of the tug of war. Everyone goes with you. If one person starts pulling, everybody's going. And
I love that. That's super cool. Yeah.
So if we can just take a breath, and it's like anything, you cannot calm down from a really high level unless you practice to higher and higher levels. So that's what mindfulness and meditation and stuff, doing yoga, just going for nice long walks. Swimming is really good for our breathing as well. Kapa haka, we do beautiful big breaths in our kapa haka, times. Anything that's really going to activate beautiful big breaths in our lungs, because it's practicing that. And when you do that, you pull your whole body down into a state of calm, which is effectively pulling that red brain down and allowing green brain to be back. So if we really want to be as, empathic, as logical, have great ideas and be healthy, we keep our body in a state of calm. Yeah.
I love this green and red. Yeah, I love that. That's super cool. It's so easy to visualize, to understand. I love that. What's your favorite technique to activate the green brain?
Yeah, and breathing is the first step. I just prefer to breathe in. I count how long it takes me to breathe in, and whatever that number is, I double it on the way out. And so breathing in and out. Another lady shared with me square breathing, so breathing in, holding, breathing out, holding. But also conditioning, and we talked yesterday about Pavlov's dog and how Pavlov rung his dog and rung the bell and fed the dog, rung the bell and fed the dog. What we can do is, if we do have an issue with staying calm, is when you've done your mindfulness, when you've done your yoga, your body is activated into this beautiful state of calm, which is good. But if you've got a meeting in 5 minutes, you can't go do a 20-minute yoga thing. So when we feel our body in that state, we can do something that we can use to activate the calm. So you could click your fingers, you could touch your head, you could close your eyes and think of a swing, whatever you want, whatever you can use. Athletes use it. You look at the little things that athletes use before they serve the ball or whatever. So there's a little ritualistic thing. I quite like, and I just think it looks cool because I cross my legs and breathe deep, and I can do that when I'm driving anywhere in the country or whatever, and I hold my fingers like this just because that's what all the movies show you, isn't it? And I go like that, and then when I feel really calm, I concentrate on how my body feels, and then I look down at my fingers. And even now, when I look at my fingers now, I can feel my body starting to change slightly. And so if you do something, and it could be just touching your earlobe or putting your fingers together, whatever you feel like you want to do, when you do your mindfulness, when you do your nice walk or you run or you cook your nice dinner or you clean the house and you look around and go, wow, that looks great and I feel good, do something that then when you're in a meeting or got an email or you've got to answer or do whatever, you can use that little conditioned response to calm yourself down. Yeah.
That's awesome. So if you're listening or watching us, take a deep breath right now. Take one big deep breath. One thing I really like, it works very well for me, it's when I get to those two first fingers and I put around my pulse and I try to feel the pulse. Yeah, that helps a lot to calm, and just something to connect with the present moment, because normally when we stress, we just, overthinking and kind of, we are kind of sleeping. So the way, one of the ways, I like to use it to wake me up, it's to reconnect, because when you start feeling the beat of your heart, it's a really good sensation. So I recommended this one as well.
Cool. And you could try and slow it down or speed it, like slow it down and you could feel that. Yeah.
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
And it's whatever works for anybody. It's whatever works.
Yeah.
We shouldn't take somebody else's and think it's going to work for us. We can try it, but if it doesn't work, try something else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Kathryn, I love what you said as well, because I was shocked when I saw the correlation with the Pavlov experiment, and even you see on the device, for example, Facebook, every time you get a notification, you have that little bell ring, and that was on purpose. They didn't, they used that principle to condition as such a basic principle. So you ring the bell, you give a treat to the dog, and that's the way you train animals. And that's what they're doing for us. And they are doing very well, by the way. Huh?
Hey, and do you really want to be a puppet? Do you really want to be controlled by them? And it's amazing to see. Like, I was sitting with a group of adults recently, and then there was a ping, and we were talking, and there was a ping, and they were like, "Oh, whose was that?" I'm like, "We're talking, can we?" And they had to get up and have a look because it's like, "Oh, it might be mine." Oh, who cares right now? And when we're in conversations, if I'm in conversations with my friends and they pick up their phone, I'll just stop talking. And then they'll look at me and go, "What?" And I went, because, and I was saying, you say, well, I want to get little stickers made to give out to everybody to put on the back of devices. And the stickers will say, whatever's on this device is more important than you. And if you put that on whoever's device and they pick it up and you go, "Oh, what's that say?" And they go, "Oh," because you are sending a message to, it could be work, it could be this, which is more important than me. And we're not sitting in the space. We're not listening to each other. We're not learning about each other. We're constantly waiting for that ping. So leave it, turn it off. Be present with the people you're with. Be present with your children. Be present with your friends. It drives me crazy, even wherever you are, and people are constantly just picking up their phone, or they have now the backs of the phones flash, so you can't even turn them over and not watch it. Then there's a flash, and they're doing that on purpose. Oh, a flash! I better turn it over. It's like, dinner tables, I can't even believe that people have to have a conversation about taking things away at dinner tables. This is the most beautiful time to connect with our, whānau and have whānau time. And we've got devices at the table? No, not necessary. Nobody's that, like you were saying, nobody's that important.
That important, yeah.
There might be some certain one times in your life that maybe something's going on, you might need to be kept in contact with, but honestly, half an hour at the dinner table, put it down. Because we are, it's just training us, and we're just like these little puppets doing whatever they tell us to. Oh, look, they're telling us to do that, let's do it. Take control. Take the control back.
Yeah. And so much noise as well, no? Because on the internet, everyone is screaming for attention. It's a noisy place, and that's of course gonna interfere on the mind. No mind. I always say to my students, the body benefits from movement, but the mind benefits from stillness. And the internet is not gonna give you any stillness. There's no way. You go there, it's too much noise. It's very loud noise. I always like to think as well about the things I watch and the things I read. I treat those things as the same way I treat my diet. So the things I put on my brain. So I'm trying to be as conscious as possible. But please, I'm far away from from be that fit with the mind. Because it's super hard. It's super hard. And we always have something. I'm doing this for the podcast, or I'm doing this for the business, or I'm doing this for But it's super hard to have the focus. No, I'm doing that for work. Now I'm already zone out. I'm already doing something just for pure entertainment. It's a hard one. So for the parents, what's your device for the parents?
Is first of all to recognize that these things are developed to addict. Like I said, they shouldn't have been introduced. They should never have been brought into the world like that. I love
what you said about that, yeah.
Yeah, so it's not you've done something wrong. It's not that you should have known better. what we have to do is teach our children the goodness, the fun, the benefits of things that are not on the screen. So one of the challenges there is parents actually have to be sometimes a bit more involved. And I don't mean thinking up everything for them, but maybe go for a walk with your kids. Board games. We played board games. I didn't have a TV in our house. We've got it 2 years ago, I think, in our house. And I still remember someone coming in and going, "You got a TV?" I was like, "Yeah, just there were circumstances," which meant I got a TV, but we hardly ever watch it. We never had a TV. And so I would think, well, we haven't got a TV and the kids will be bored. So I need to play a board game with them. I need to do something with them. And we used to play charades. We used to play board games. And once you started playing, it was like, oh gosh, maybe I could do something else. And it's like so much fun. The kids went to school and they were teaching their teachers charades at one stage because they're playing charades and they go, oh, and you can do this and you can do that. And just this lack of, like you say, that noise, we need to just teach kids how cool it is to use their imagination, to be calm, to read a book. It just, if we can teach them the good of that and get them to feel that, go, how good was that? How nice was that? Oh, yeah, it was actually. Excellent. So next time, maybe put the device down and try and get them to intrinsically understand the pleasure that they get when we're not on there. Because, like you say, as soon as you're on the screen, ping, 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 it's immediately getting you immediately feedback. We don't get that from real life. But the long time that we spend out there with people, we will get just as much reward in the end. It just won't be as ting, like this. Mm-hmm. So we need to support, we need to feed back to them the good stuff, put a little bit of effort in ourselves. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's it. We have to help our kids understand that, because we can't blame them for wanting to be on devices. So don't expect your kids to put them down. Mm-hmm. We have to support and teach them too. I think that's what we need to know. And it's not easy.
It's not easy.
It's not easy, Yeah.
Yeah, and the social skills as well, because the phone, the phone came to occupy this void, because we, as a social creatures, we don't know what to do with our hands. Before it was the cigarette and the drink on the hands. Now that the phone comes to replace those things, So I think learning social skills is such a powerful thing to replace a little bit that, because lots of people who have social anxiety, they use the phone just to amplify that even more, because I walk in a room, I don't know everybody, I get my phone and I just pretend I'm doing the most important thing in the world. I'm super important. I'm doing this text right now. It's super important. It's nothing. It's just you're trying to avoid the real conversation with other people, right?
Absolutely. And do you know how much fun it is? And I love doing this. I fly a lot. And so I love sitting at the airport when you're hopping on the plane and just sit there and you sit and you have no device and you look around and you look at all the people arriving, you look at all the people leaving. And when people see you looking, they're like, that person's looking at me. And they can get quite and what you see, and I get my kids to do it and we go, what do you think about that person? Or look at that person. Or look at that person over there, they're sad. Look at that person, they're happy. And we start to realize that real things happen in this world. But just people freak out when you're sitting there looking around, because you're not supposed to look at anyone anymore. You're right. You've got to be on here. So it's a really cool thing to do. And you're not looking at people, but I just look around just normally. And then I sort of think, where is my mind wandering to? And then I realize that there's lots of different people around, and this is where people think, and people are arguing and people are crying, people are this. And it's just amazing how that can, even for our kids, start making them realize that this world is real. Because on social media, we only ever see the best thing ever or the worst thing ever. We don't see the boring middle stuff. We don't see people living their lives. And, so if you just sit there and observe in a cafe, sit there and observe, and sometimes look around yourself. People don't like it anymore. It used to be normal. But yeah, just because there is all that noise and all that, stop. I can have where I live, I'm really lucky. I've got, Kiriru and Tui and this beautiful view. And in the morning, I just take my cup of tea, leave the phone inside and just sit. And when I first started doing that, made myself do it, I was like, or maybe, but I'd need to look up such. And I'm like, why? My children are in bed here. There's nobody needs to get hold of me right now. Yeah. And you sit, and it's amazing the places your mind starts going or doesn't. And that's allowing us this this moments, and we just don't do that. You know? The noise is just so overwhelming.
And it's still a responsibility, because I don't think it's that hard for us to identify what's good, what's a good thing for me, what's a bad thing. I would say that I destroy, I was saying to you yesterday, I like to go to those retreats of meditation. I have the capacity to destroy 10 days of more than 10 hours of hard work, meditating, fasting, in 10 minutes on social media. It's the proportions, it's almost that, and we know that. It's kind of when we eat something, we know it's not the right thing. You're gonna feel bad about it. So we need to take a responsibility, because the problem of addiction, we're gonna try to justify with all our core, all our being, to make sure we keep our addiction protected, right?
Absolutely, human nature. Yeah.
Yeah, and we need to take a little bit of responsibility to that, because we are all addictive, and it's something we are facing right now. It's another challenge for us as a species, huh? Do you see social media as a tool?
Yeah, it is. Absolutely. We can let people know things. I love the fact that I can know what's going on with my friends overseas. I mean, friends in all countries over the world. Great friends in the UK, the United States, Egypt, all over Europe, Spain. And I can see what they're up to. And I go, like I was just talking to my friend in the UK this morning. I'm like, I see you're on holiday. And how cool is it that you went to such and such a place? So it was great. But I called her and I talked to her. I didn't like her post. I didn't, but it is nice. It's nice to know things. There's some really good things, and I can keep in touch with my whānau who are overseas, and I can see what's going on for them. They don't have to text me every day, this is what I'm doing. They let people know. And if there's anything really big in my world, I'll let people know. I post very little, but I am on Facebook. I do like that, because there are things about the kids, or if we've been on a trip, we might let people know. So there's some really good stuff. It's just that we need to know that what we're seeing on Facebook is the cream, is my decision to show you this stuff. And I think I said yesterday, I had a friend who, she posted one time, she goes, I'm out with my husband for my anniversary, and lucky me, like this. And so what you do as a person, you go, oh, look at that beautiful couple. If only I was that lucky, or she's so lucky. And then it was 10 minutes later, and we were organizing something else, and we had a group chat with a bunch of girls. And she starts posting on this group chat, and she's posting. And one of my other girlfriends said, aren't you out at dinner with your husband? She goes, oh yeah, we are, but we're not talking. And I was like, do you see, so socially, she's got this, oh, look at me. But actually, she's not even, I wouldn't be out with my partner and texting and stuff like that. I'd be there, and you wouldn't know. No, I've never ever posted, like I'm out at the moment with my partner for dinner,
Yeah.
So we've got to be careful that what we're seeing is the cherry, and that's fine, because that's what I want to see of my whānau, and that's what I want to see of my friends overseas. I want to see when they're doing cool things, but I know that they're actually real human beings as well. And when I talk to them and connect with them, they go, I'm having a bad day, this is happening for me, this is not so good, I'm struggling with my kids, But if we only rely on social media, we just have this ridiculous idea of the world, and then we think there's something wrong with us because we're not in this beautiful space. So there is really good stuff, but we have to keep the green brain on board and say, actually, that's this world. It's not the real world. That's what we've got to do. And we've got to connect with friends and talk with friends and be honest with friends and keep that reality check in.
So, Kathryn, from a neuroscientist perspective, do you think social media make us a little bit oversensitive
to
everything? if for example, if I said, I don't like the color of your shirt, that's gonna destroy, especially if it's an online comment as well. No, it's gonna destroy your life for forever, right?
Yeah, we've got this huge need to be accepted, aren't we, and to be liked. And
this is already natural, no?
It's natural. It's natural, but it's just been increased and accentuated online. So, and I mean, and that's another of the coddling of the the American mind that Jonathan Haidt talks about. And he talks about the fact that even at universities, and this is where he first started his understanding, even at universities, where universities are supposed to be where we can talk about anything. Okay, so you've got certain places that you maybe shouldn't push different things into. If you're in a specific church, you don't want to start bringing in all these other things in. But universities should be where we can talk. And they started banning talks. They started banning talks from subjects they didn't like. And he said, what is this about? What is this about? And then when he started looking at lecturing and teaching now, even in really abstract, open-minded subjects, the lecturer can only teach to the lowest, like to the where they'll be less likely to offend. Because there could be 1,000 people in that theatre, and one of the students takes offence to what they say, and they go and report it, and their attitude, they have to be taken into account. And so all of a sudden that lecturer gets in trouble. So they have to raise all of their stuff, and so we have to sit in this little bland space where we're not going to offend anyone or say anything. Well, if you don't like the colour of my shirt, I don't care.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
And I should wear it because I like it. And okay, I should go and have a quick look in the mirror and say, have you got a point? No, actually you don't. I'm fine with it. We should be able to say things, and we should be able to do things and talk. And there are very few spaces now. I've got some really good friends, and we can say whatever we want. We can chat about things. But just the other day I was with a bunch of friends, and they were talking about who votes for who. And someone said I was voting for this, group, and this other person absolutely lost the plot. You're allowed to have different views.
Yeah.
So you're right, but we're because we're being fed all the stuff that we agree with, we start not being able to get used to someone disagreeing with me. It doesn't make me a bad person if you disagree with me. It's my thoughts. It's my opinions. I should always reflect on it. Always reflect on it if someone says, I don't agree with you, I don't think. But then you go, okay, no, you got a point. I might change. Or, no, actually, I'm going to stay with what I think. So, yeah, absolutely, we're not sensitized because of social media. We're sensitized because we're being fed all this positive. Everyone says, I like that. Very seldom do people go, good point. But, yeah, so we definitely need to chill out a little bit and take criticism and see it for what it is. It's a suggestion.
I love that. That's super cool. Do you think because of social media as well, the words kind of depression and anxiety, it's kind of being a little bit overused, and then it's too much glamour now around them in a bad way? Yeah,
it's aligned with what you were just saying. We can't accept. We want our whole lives to sit in this happy space, like in this perfect space, because everybody else has got a perfect life. So why shouldn't I have a perfect life? And so everybody else is happy, and everybody else is, excelling at this, and every other person's kid's got a certificate for this, and all because we post it all. Everybody's kid gets certificates. Surprise! And it's great that people are proud of it. But when you post all this stuff, it's like, oh, mine did. And so it's this feeding of all this perfection, and we go, oh, I'm sad. Oh, nobody else is sad. There must be something wrong with me. And if we truly have this conversation, like when I was a mum of a baby, and I was like, I can't do this. And I kept going and thinking there's something wrong with me because I can't, I'm tired and I'm crying all the time and all of this sort of stuff, until I finally said to one of my friends, I think I'm doing this all wrong. I think there's something wrong with me. And she goes, oh, I feel exactly the same way. And so all of a sudden, me feeling sad, tired, but useless, I still felt that way because she felt that way too. I was okay. But if I'd kept relying on social media where everyone looks perfect with their perfect babies, I would worry about being sad. But all of us, I was like, it's normal to feel this way. And what we've got to do is share the normality of anxiety, the normality of being sad, the normality of being frustrated, because we all get it. But a lot of parents will hide that from their kids, and then nobody else will show it to them. And they get a bit sad. They go, oh, don't be sad. Yeah, actually, off you go away and be sad. And it is, we're becoming less able to accept that sadness is a state, anxiety is a state, and it's totally fine. Unless it's over anxious, and then it might be considered an issue. over sad, and then we might call it depression. But honestly, it's normal for all these emotions, and we need to let kids know it, and we've got to sit okay in that space.
And don't try to fix it, right?
Yeah. You got to learn. You got to practice these feelings and return from them. Otherwise, you don't learn. And I get it that we don't want our kids to be sad or angry or teased or left behind or fail, but it's called life. And if as a parent you can honestly say you've never ever felt sad and you've never ever felt frustrated and you've never ever felt failure, then that's fine. Protect your kids from it for the rest of their life. But the only reason we can deal with it is because we practiced it. We practiced it all the time, and we've got to let our kids practice it. They've got to fail. They've got to feel sad. They've got to feel anxious as part of life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And this is where resilience comes from, right?
Yeah. Resilience is, a lot of people think, oh, that person's resilient. They're so, they never cry. No, actually, resilience is the ability to feel that feeling. Because feeling those feelings, feeling sad is not nice, but there's a healing process in feeling sad, sitting within that sadness and truly feeling sad about what you're feeling sad about. Mm-hmm. The anxiety is saying there's something going on. So sitting with that anxiety and going, I'm anxious, I really am anxious, or I'm frustrated. So resilience gives us the ability to sit in that space, which is in itself productive. Might not be nice, but it's productive. And then when we've been there for long enough, whatever that is, could be a day or two, it could be 5 minutes, whatever. Once we've been there, we then go, okay, it's time to breathe, do our conditioned response, whatever, go for a walk, go back to the gym, go, see some friends, whatever, and get ourselves back down again. Okay, ready, back down. And that's resilience. Resilience is about being able to sit in that feeling. And truly, if you can sit in that feeling, there's healing. If we avoid feeling sad, if we avoid our anxieties and frustrations and anger, it's not a healthy space to be. It's okay to be in those spaces. But if you're not resilient, it'll get too overwhelming too quickly. So being able to stay there is really important and really healthy.
Yeah. I love one of your videos. You talk about I think it's going to link with that very well, the sandpaper and the aloe vera. Can you explain this your idea?
So I call anything, remember we said that if there's something in the environment that worries us, it stresses us and activates our red brain. I call that a sandpaper, and then the healing of that is the aloe vera. Mm-hmm. And so what we've got is every time a sandpaper happens, you essentially activate the red brain more and more and more. And that's why you can get on the way to work and there's traffic and then the car wasn't starting properly, and then you get to work and there's no milk and there's an email and then somebody gives you an assignment or whatever, and there's these little sandpapers and they build up and they build up and they build up. And then you get home and you're like, it's fine once I get home. And then someone says, what's for dinner? You're like, what? So that's because you've been sandpapered. If I touch my hand now, it wouldn't hurt. But if I'd sandpapered it, that same touch would hurt. If I get home after a perfect day and someone says, what's for dinner? I could quite happily say, I think you've been home today. Up to you. You sort yourself out. So I'm not like I'm cooking dinner, but do you see? Uh-huh. But what we know is that if we identify sandpapers, we say, actually, that annoyed me. That upset me. That made me sad. If we can do that, and then we can aloe vera, which is the breathing, which is the calming ourselves down, each time we keep ourselves back instead of going down and down and down. And then we get to that rumination, that catastrophizing, and then we feel bad in our bodies. Our stomachs are feeling sore, our shoulders are tense, with all of these things. And if we stay in that space, we can put on weight or lose weight without any other change in, diet or exercise, or we can get heart palpitations, or we can get skin infections or mouth sores, and those sorts of things actually come from staying in a sandpapered state. So we go, actually, I am feeling a bit stressed. I do need to do something about that. And if we can do that and aloe vera each time we have a sandpaper, if as much as possible, then we keep ourselves in this beautiful space, which means we can be responsive to people around us. Remember to pick up whatever on the way home instead of completely forgetting, And the world's not perfect, but as much as we can look after ourselves. Yeah, so that's the sandpaper aloe vera analogy. Yeah.
I love that. And because do you remember when was the last time you have to use aloe vera?
All the time.
All the time?
All the time. All the time. And it's just that breathing, it's that checking in with yourself. But aloe vera can be as simple as taking a breath if the sandpaper is a little bit. But I mean, lately with a lot of stuff that's been going on, I've been in quite a large sandpaper brain. And so I make sure that I do so. I mean, at the moment, I've got a jigsaw at home because I love jigsaws, because jigsaws allow me to just get into this beautiful space where I'm in control of everything and I'm there. And then when I get to a space, then I can start thinking about what I need to think about, or doing some more walks, or when I'm away and I'm doing things, finding a space by the water that I can drive to and have a look. So really actively trying to find times when you can allow that space. The more you think you're getting activated, the more effort you have to put into staying calm. So all the time, but it can be the smallest thing as doing a breath. I mean, I was a little bit late here today and I did some breathing. I was like, hey, bring us back. It's not a problem, that sort of thing. So, all of those sorts of things. So you can use it, but we really have to respect ourselves. And it's about going for a walk on a beach, and if you can, a little holiday away or something different, or even just pretending you've gone on a holiday, just something that
I love
just
that,
makes you
yeah.
happy, It's just, I'm too busy. Actually, are you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's another buzzword as well, no? I think it's, if you don't say I'm busy, you start to feel bad. Man, something's wrong with me, I'm not busy.
Yeah. How many times a person at the supermarket and they go, so have you had a busy day? And I go, actually, no, I've done hardly anything today. And you see them look up at you and they're like, well, that's not the answer you're supposed to say. It's so funny because you're exactly right. It's, oh, no, don't say that. It's like, no, hardly anything today. They're just like, because you're not allowed to say that. But it's quite funny. You should try it. It's good.
So, Kathryn, what's your opinion for? I don't have kids, but I always had this in my mind. If I had a kid, even it's good for me to not have, because otherwise I'm gonna try to impose all those things on my kids. But those things of what's the workout for your brain? I read that. Please correct if I'm wrong. Okay, a long time ago. I don't know if it has any science behind it, but things the workout for your brain. So they said learn another language, trying to play an instrument, meditation. It's actually, meditation comes in as number one. I think meditation, learn another language, play an instrument, and talk to other people. Yeah, because that it's a massive thing to to talk to other people. Because you have to be present, you have to pay attention. Yeah, in all those things. Is that correct?
Well, they're talking to other people. If you scan the brain and watch all the different lighting up areas, the time when the brain lights up the most areas and the most amazingly is in a relationship. So when you're with someone who you're interested
that's amazing.
in. So there's massive parts, because that's what keeps us alive, is being with other people. You cannot survive on your own. So the brain is made to get massive pleasurable feedback from being with other people. So and I sometimes think, especially when I was in London last, and there's a lot of the homeless people, we see it here as well. And what are they all doing? Talking. They're talking. They're talking to themselves. They're talking, because that's what they need. They need to hear language, and no one else will talk to them, so they talk to themselves, and you see how important communication is. It's very sad, isn't it, that they're having to talk to themselves. But absolutely that is. And meditation is that beautiful control of the body. So I would say that's needed all your life. We need, with our kids, we need to be ensuring that they are building their brain for what they need as an adult. And one of the things we need as an adult, if you think about it, is time management, an ability to plan, an ability to do cause and consequence and action, and all of those sorts of things. And so a lot of that is about letting our kids make their own mistakes and learning their own way. And one of the things I sometimes do with audiences when we're thinking about what do we do for our adolescents, because when we get our adolescents, they're in a state where they're significantly more likely to make decisions with their red brains, with their absolutely impulsive part of their brain. They don't access the green brain very well under pressure, our adolescents. So we have to train the red brain. And so when we've got our little 2-year-old who's climbing on a chair, we will sometimes say, oh, sweetheart, stop climbing, you're going to fall. And they keep climbing. And 2 options. First option is to go over and pick them up and put them on the ground. and we go, that was dangerous, you'll hurt yourself. Now, there is learning in the brain, up in the green brain. Aha, if I do that, I'll hurt myself, right? So it'll happen. Or, sweetheart, you're going to fall off there, and they keep climbing, and you divert eyes, bang, they hit, and they fall, and they hurt themselves. Nothing major. They're not really going to do any major damage. And that procedural part, the lower part, the cause and effect part of their brain learns, it hurts, right? And so it's a instant body learning. And they're running with their eyes closed. Open your eyes, we can either grab them or let them go. Bang. It hurts, right? So it's this bottom part of the brain that learns, but instead we keep picking them up and stopping them and telling this part of the brain. And so when they become an adolescent, and this is definitely not a guarantee, but you can see if they're about to do something stupid or they're about to make a bad decision, they can't go into their green brain and go, oh, I remember mum told me that it's very silly to do dangerous things, right? They just need to go, oh, I think this might be a bad idea, because they know it, And so we really, and that's another thing that devices take away from our kids is doing stuff, jumping and building and hammering your finger and all of those sorts of things. So we need to let things happen, and the body needs to experience stuff for when it gets older. But doing your learning a musical instrument, learning a language, I certainly learnt that about people who are around about 50, because at that stage there is starting to be a natural lack of communication between the parts of the brain. So that starts to sort of break down. So if you're doing music, you're using both halves of the brain, or learning language. But you can't give someone a language lesson for their 50th if they speak lots of languages. That's not going to tax the brain, right? You give them a musical instrument training, or so you should learn something around about 50th. You should take up something that you've never really done before, even if you do it badly. It's good for you, because it's training the brain to create new, get those connections back and keep them active. Nuns, they found that they had significantly better brain longevity,
really?
and that wasn't from the alcohol. They looked at that. It was from doing crosswords and jigsaws. And when you think about that, and so now Sudoku sort of go into that, but it's using different parts of your brain and keeping on going. So that's what we should be doing for longevity of the brain. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. I heard Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is very powerful too. Include that on the list.
Well, it's using all different parts of the brain, isn't it? Yeah. So take it up when you're 50 if you've never done it. But keeping on doing it is amazing as well. Yeah. So,
Kathryn, on all your studies, did you, of course, apart you already told us so many things, but there anything was shocking? You kind of read about it and said, "Holy, is that what this whole technology is doing with our kids' brains and behaviors and all of that?"
I think it's that overarching thing that if we watch something enough on a screen, we'll actually believe it, and it's truly that who is good and who is bad, because I think that's a huge thing in our society now, and it's a huge message we're being given. And if you keep getting fed the same stuff which you do on social media, if you have a belief, you'll keep getting fed it. And that's what's going to be the breakdown of human society, is if we can't accept people who are different to ourselves. And if we train the brain to really think people who are different are bad, that really worries me. It really worries me. And it's a similar, but not as worrying, but the police car chases, we're getting a lot more police car chases now. And if you think about, if you practiced on a game again and again and again, accelerating when you hear a siren, you'll start getting so used to that when you hear a siren in real life, you'll accelerate. And I was talking to some police people recently, and they said the crazy thing is there's an increase in mums doing car chases because they've been playing games, trying to bond with their kids and playing games with their kids. And they said it's not as impacting because they've already got quite a good green brain, so they'll accelerate and then they will often stop. But they'll do a bit of outrunning now because they've played these games so often to bond with their kids. And they've had a couple of those situations. I was talking to someone there and they said that's the mums will say, yeah, we've been playing games.
That's
and
insane.
Allowing that, isn't that crazy? So what it scares me is the amount that people are playing and the messages that are being sent. and it's okay to hurt people. It's okay to hate people. It's okay to be sarcastic and put people down all the time. And it's just that, like you said, that just the light learning, but then it becomes so heavy we can't break it. And that's what worries me, because we're not respecting how important that is in the brain. That's what worries me about device use. Yeah.
Wow.
The dislocation of society really is,
That's so powerful. That's very interesting.
more friends but less acquaint. Like we think, I've got all these friends, but actually have you?
That's so awesome. So, Kathryn, now it's the time for embrace the chaos. So, first, there any question I should ask you during this episode and I didn't?
I think we did pretty well. I think yesterday when we were summing it up, I said about how we can help parents if their kids are addicted. And it's really simplistic. It's too simplistic for how big it is. But I like people to just imagine what they would do if their children were addicted to alcohol. And it's harder because you can just get rid of all the alcohol, right? You can't get rid of devices. So imagine your child's addicted to alcohol. How would you help them get off it? And alcoholics can't get off it because you tell them to stop drinking alcohol. So if the one question would be like, what can we do to help? And we've said a lot of it. But yeah, it's treat it like an addiction, a true addiction. Don't expect them to, they'll lie, they'll cheat, they'll tell you stories, they'll do anything, like you said, to keep that addiction up and to justify it. Know that's an addiction and help them along that pathway. Yeah.
So, Kathryn, what's the 3 most influential books you ever read?
Favorite workish book is The Boy Who Was Raised as a Dog and Other Stories. Dr. Bruce Perry wrote that. And each chapter is about, unfortunately, a child who's been abused. But by the end of the book, you learn so much about how, if there has been, chaos, we can create sort of change. So that's pretty cool. The Boy Who Was Raised as a Dog. At the moment, I'm reading Chasing the Scream, which is about the war on drugs, which is fascinating to understand and fascinating to see how such a influential theory came from just someone really want to increase his importance in the police force, so crazy. That's pretty cool. And novel-wise, A Little Life. It's by a Japanese author who I can't pronounce the name, but A Little Life. And it was the last book that I've read that you can't put down. You want to go and read it, and and it's times when you're like looking around and you think, oh, where's such and such? And then you realize they're not actually your friends. You're not actually living in that world, but you just get into this book so much. It's quite a big book. Then again, my daughter read it and she really didn't like it at all, but I loved it. So, but it's about a journey of a gentleman who was harming himself, and his life in that space and all his friends in that space, how they tried to support him and how he felt about it. So it is a novel. It's obviously a little bit more of a heavy novel, but I absolutely loved it. So A Little Life, yeah. So they're the 3 probably I'd pull out. Yeah.
That's awesome. Kathryn, what's life is about it? What's the meaning of life?
Connections.
Connections, huh?
I mean, first as a neuroscientist, that's what lights up the brain. So we know that it's important. But if you have ever been with someone who is towards the end of life, and you talk to them, they don't go, gosh, I'm glad I've got a really big fancy house. I'm really glad they say this is what's important, and what do you want towards the end of life? It would be people and connections. And so that's it. And just the other day, I hadn't seen someone for ages. The kids and I haven't met up with them, and so I rang. I was driving along, rang. I've got hands free, so it's okay. Just rang. Hello, Kathryn. I was like, haven't seen you 6 years.
Wow.
I thought, stop thinking about it. Stop thinking about connecting with them. Let them know. So we'll go over in a couple of weekends, catch up with the couple, and like connections. Be with people. Be by yourself at times, but be with people and connections. That's what we get to take. We don't get to take anything else, and it makes us feel good, and it makes us do good things. And stop chasing things that really aren't. We keep being told that they're important, but truly does it make you happy? And it's people. Hey.
That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
My grandmother used to say to me, they said, doesn't matter how big is your check, that's it's about how big it's your book number. With
Okay,
font-
right.
She used to say that.
The book, yeah.
Because before the status of having money, it's how big is your check? How many checks do you?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I love that. So how about this? If you could go back in time and have a 60 minutes with your 15-year-old self, which advice would you give to yourself?
Gosh. I mean, I wouldn't want to change too much. Life would be a lot easier if I'd done some different things early on. But I still wouldn't want to change any of it. I wouldn't change any of the mistakes I'd made because they've got me to where I am, which I'm really happy. But I think, and what I try and do with my kids now is make them more present and more reflective on what happens to them. Because I traveled a lot. I worked overseas and I lived overseas and met lots of people, and I love it. But I didn't see it for how amazing it was. I think I could have got a lot more out of each of the moments if I'd been reflective and present. And I sort of never really learnt to be reflective and present when I was a kid, and I try and get my kids to be like that. So I think if I went back, I'd say do everything the same mostly, but just be present and think about it. Yeah, I think that would have been quite cool. But I've had a pretty crazy full life, and I don't think obviously there's things I'd want to be different, but nothing that I could specifically control. Would I want to change? Yeah.
I love that. And what's your 5 years goal? So we can watch this back in 5 years and okay, did you achieve your goal?
5 years? 5 years, maybe a little bit beyond 5 years, but 5 years. My ultimate goal for a very long time is to keep on doing what I'm doing. I love sharing this information, but ultimately I would like to be part of reforming, looking at the family court system, because I myself have been through it, and a lot of friends have been through it, and I find the current system doesn't go well for children. It doesn't go well for adults, but that's not really my worry. My worry is the children caught up in it, and I've worked with enough children and supported enough spaces through there that it's very, very, very hard to be present and attuned to your children during that space, and they're the ones that are getting lost in this process, and we need more people who actually understand our children to be involved. So I'd like to be advising and looking and supporting that change, because currently it's based on a system that's more, it's not child friendly. It's not understanding our children. So that's what I'd like to do. So call me back in 5 years, and hopefully I'm on my way.
So we can do another podcast just about that. I found that very interesting subject. That's awesome. So Kathryn Berkett, is that the way you pronounce your name? Please pronounce your full name.
Berkett, Kathryn
Berkett.
Yeah.
So please, can you give yourself a plug if someone wants to connect with you and to know more about your work? How can we find you? Where's the social media?
You can follow me on Facebook, but you'll be very disappointed about how much goes on.
I know. I was trying to chase you there for a long time.
At first, I was going to post everywhere I went every week and stuff. Honestly, I can't be bothered. But I do have a Facebook post, which I'll put things up. Like, obviously, I'll put this podcast, and I put things up when things happen. I do have a website, and I should have an up-to-date calendar, which I don't have. I train a lot around the country with organisations. So most of my work is with organisations who book me, schools, police, high and complex needs organisations, oranga tamariki. I do that. I do parent presentations every now and then. Often get asked by local schools or local organisations to come in and do a presentation on resilience or on the adolescent brain, which is always a good one. Started to do some on the screen time stuff. So they're quite cool. They can be used as a fundraiser or just getting people in. But have a look on my website. I've got a couple of videos and a couple of bits and pieces. I'd like to get a course up and running on my website. But so keep a lookout. Watch my TED Talk, trying to get to 10,000 by
Yeah,
Christmas.
yes. It's a really good one. I do recommend. Yeah, truly recommend. Yeah.
It's a good conversation starter.
Yes.
It's a nice way of just saying, and so when you're saying to your children, get off the device, you can say, you remember what Kathryn said on her TED Talk, and you don't have to be the baddie. I can be the baddie, so have a look. But it's any information that makes us better for each other, as friends, as colleagues, as partners, as parents is pretty cool. So hopefully some stuff on there can help you. But this podcast has been amazing. Really cool. So hopefully
thank you so much.
People.
Thank you so much. We we did that twice. Really, really appreciate. So your website is engagetraining.co.nz. We're gonna put on the link on the description. So Kathryn, thank you so much again. And I hopefully we're gonna see each other again for another podcast, because that was amazing. Lots of good information. So as you said yesterday, let's keep changing the world, right?
Hey, let's keep changing the world. Yeah, because we can.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Cool. Thanks.